Hello everyone, my name is Sergio Cucinella and I'm a software engineer of the Android team at Truecaller. Today, I'll talk about how to build application for the fast-growing markets. But before that, allow me to give you a brief introduction about Truecaller. It is a Swedish startup headquartered in Stockholm, and we have three main products. Truecaller, it's an application that allows you to discover in real time who is calling you, even if you don't have the number in your phone book. It blocks calls from the top spammers of your region, and it allows you to always have access to the right information, people, and businesses when you need them. Truecaller, it's a phone application. It enriches your call history with pictures and names when they are missing. And it also allows you to discover who you are going to call before performing the call itself, in case the number is not in your phone book. And finally, TrueMessenger, that is a messaging application that allows you to discover in real time who is sending you messages, and it automatically blocks and filters spam, so that your inbox is always safe and clean. But back to the topic. I'm going to give you a brief introduction about the emerging markets, and then how to create great experiences for them, and finally, how the definition of free can be a little bit different in those places. So when companies and entrepreneurs want to launch new products, they usually think about the West markets. So North America and Western Europe. And those have a fairly big amount of potential users. In fact, at the end of 2014, there were 163 million smartphone users in the United States and 197 million in the Western Europe. And this amount of users is growing, but in a sort of moderate way. What we tend to underestimate is the potential that all the other markets actually can have in our distribution. As we can see here, in China, at the end of 2014, there were 522 million smartphone users. In India, 270 million, and in the MENA region, 122 million. And we also need to remember that the next billion internet users is coming from those regions. So they are definitely going to keep experiencing a huge growth in terms of users. It is extremely easy to build great products with our brand new high-end devices that have almost unlimited data plans on very fast LTE networks. And we tend to forget sometimes what's the norm in emerging markets. So when it comes to devices, they are usually dual SIM. The screens are not very big. The resolutions are not very high. And even the new devices are CPU and memory constrained, well, relatively constrained. And not everyone can afford new smartphones, of course. So there are many users that actually buy second-hand devices that are even more CPU, memory, and GPU constrained. And most likely, they are not running the latest version of Android, and maybe they are not even going to get any update. When it comes to data, they usually have prepaid plans. They are not very cheap, so the users use the connectivity only when it's extremely needed. And if we think that the smartphone might be the only entry point to internet, then it's obvious that they really care about data usage. And finally, networks. They are slow. 3G is now a norm, and they are congested. Even Wi-Fi is slow because it's based on slow landline connections, and it's not always available. So how do we build great experience for those markets? Well, as I said, we cannot rely on an always-on internet connectivity. And this means that we need to enable the users to open and at least partially use the application when they're offline. This means that we have to build some sort of caching layer. But as I said, the devices are memory constrained. So when we do that, we definitely need to keep in mind that the cache should be proportional to the amount of memory that is available on the device. It is a good idea to bundle MDPI and LDPI resources. Maybe XXX HDPI are not fundamental for those markets. We definitely need to keep in mind the image download size, because that dominates the data usage of an application. So we should try to download the thumbnail and preview images, and to postpone as much as possible the download of a full-size image. And when we do that, we actually need to ensure that the full-size image is displayable on the device, because it might be simply too big. And of course, pre-scaling, it is cheaper to do it on the server side. So let's not do it on the devices, especially when they are CPU and GPU constrained. And on top of that, so since they are not really powerful, the devices, we should definitely consider the animation and the transition that really make sense and are important for the product. Because in the end, it's better to provide a simple but smooth interface rather than a pretty but laggy one. And finally, localization. We definitely should strive to provide a native experience. So invest in localization and in translations. And now the definition of free. If we look at these three applications, we can see that they are all freely downloadable on the Play Store. But what users from the emerging markets also look at is the application size. So as an example, a user in India, by looking at this application, he would recognize that downloading Truecaller costs roughly 2 euro cents, while downloading LinkedIn costs almost 4 times more than that. And as I said, the users have a prepaid data plan, so the size is extremely important. So size matters. We should do anything possible for making sure that the application size is as tiny as possible. Localizations are great for experience, but at the same time, they require quite some space. And this means that we should bundle only the localization that are really critical for our business, and to make sure that all the unsupported localization are removed, because they might be bundled in libraries that we are using. Definitely also, we should remove all the unused resources. There are some tools that can help us with that, like shrink resources and also lint. We should take advantage of tinting and color filtering so that we can reuse icons. And we definitely need to optimize our images and maybe experiment with other image formats. Use ProGuard for compressing the application as much as possible. And finally, third-party libraries. They are great because they allow us not to reinvent the wheel every single time. But at the same time, they might take some space. Therefore, we should keep an eye on them. And also, it's good to remember that Google Play services can be imported modularly, so we should definitely take advantage of that. I hope that this presentation gave you a general idea on how to optimize your products for emerging markets, and that if you are not already doing it, you will start considering it. Thank you very much.